I feel that it's really superfluous on this occasion to spend any time introducing the head table guests. They have all, with the exception of our reverend gentleman, been guests of honor at this dinner on a previous occasion. Going back to our first two dinners is Mr. Robert Welch. Next is Mr. Thomas J. Anderson. Unhappily, from our point of view, the next one is not here tonight. That is General Walker. But he sent his very best greetings to the whole group and his great regret that he couldn't be with us tonight. Coming up another year, we have Dean Clarence Mannion. Following him was Dan Smoot. And then 2 years ago, Mr. William J. Grady. We'll pause there just for a moment. There are two couples here that I think ought to be introduced. One, because of their having come such a tremendous distance, being here from Victoria in Australia, Mr. and Mrs. Holdenson. And two of our very dedicated conservatives from an area which is not known for its conservatism, Hollywood, Mr. and Mrs. Walter Brennan. And just for a brief but rather sad note, as you know, each year the programs for the dinner have been a contribution from Joe Sullivan, the printer. He was very happy to do this for us again this year, and we had hoped he could be with us, but his plans called for him to be in Rome tonight. Unfortunately, instead of going to Rome, he's had to go to the hospital again. So the table that he and his family would have occupied has been empty during most of the evening. So you should remember him in your prayers. Coming down again to last year, in keeping up the tradition of the dinner, our guest of honor was General Clyde J. Watts. So we have asked him to assume the responsibility for introducing this year's guest of honor, General Watts.
Mr. Welch, in whose presence I'm always inspired, Colonel Bunker, whom I salute with the complete respect that your record and your capability as a soldier and a man fully deserves. Radiant ralliers of the 10th New England Rally for God, Family, and Country, we're gathered here tonight for a fabulously inspiring experience. To do honor in a place that represents all that is America itself, to a great America. A man of fabulously, I wouldn't say primitive, even though his ancestors, like my old Indian ancestors, were definitely primitive, a man whose rugged pioneer background brings forward the true greatness of America. I remember an unknown writer, sometime about the 100th anniversary of the birth of our great country, charged the world, perhaps with a great deal of envy, that the test of America will come when its tide of civilization moves eastward. Now tonight, we're challenged with a man of genius, courage, and integrity who can pick up the greatness, the tradition of these fabulous forebears that made America the envy of the civilized world, if not several unknown planets, who may have had UFOs observing our accomplishments and attainments. A man who, should America have the capability of understanding and implementing his greatness, can recapture the greatness of the pioneer forebears that put us where, perhaps undeservedly, but actually we are tonight. I bring you a man whose devotion to his church, to his family, and to his country, in the highest of service as Secretary of Agriculture, with all the related honors, responsibilities, and demands that brought. A man who will inspire America if we have the courage, the determination, and the reverence to accept the challenge. Honorable Ezra Taft Benson, sir, we honor you.
General Watts, Colonel Bunker, Mrs. McKinney, distinguished guests, my fellow Americans. My soul is subdued and my feelings a bit tender, as you can well appreciate. As I look into your faces tonight, my heart swells with gratitude for the opportunity of being here, and my heart goes out to you in the pure love of freedom. So humbly and gratefully I stand before you, grateful for American patriots such as you, and humbled by your great generosity and kindness. I hope and pray that I can live to more fully merit all that has been said and done in my honor and the honor of my choice companion and members of our family. I'm always at a disadvantage when I follow a member of my family, because I live in reflected glory. And that's particularly true of my good wife, as well as the children. And I'm sure without the support and loyalty and love of my sweetheart for time and eternity, and the support of my family, I would not be here tonight. And I'm sure Ed Griffin's part on the program could have been much briefer. I'm grateful to him and to all of you. We shall never forget this impressive evening. Thank you all so much, and God bless each one of you. I'm honored to be in your presence. I fear that those in charge of this rally will never allow this annual dinner to be held in their own honor, but honored they should be. And so tonight I salute the noble efforts of Anna McKinney and her family, and Colonel Lawrence Bunker, and those associated with them in this patriotic endeavor. May God bless them for it, and may He give them the strength to continue to be an inspiration and a blessing to all of us and to this great country. Tonight, as I looked across the head table and down into the audience, my heart was filled with gratitude that in our day the Lord has raised up valiant men and women who have rallied around the flag of freedom and against the factions of force. May your numbers and influence increase. This past year, while attending the Fairfax Christian School in Virginia, my grandson Ezra Taft, who was attending this rally with several others of our posterity, was introduced to the historical character of Israel Putnam. Israel Putnam was one of the Revolutionary War farmers who left the plow in the field and who gave up his comfort in order to protect his family, defend his inalienable God-given rights, and help establish this great free country. It is heartening to know that today there are still those who answer to the rallying cry of God, family, and country. This morning, it was my privilege to walk across a part of that sacred soil where some of the best blood of Israel Putnam's generation was shed for freedom and the redemption of this land. Those noble souls did not initiate freedom, for freedom is a God-given eternal principle. But they defended and preserved it. And one of the privileges of mortal life is the opportunity to rise in freedom's defense during the time when Lucifer is permitted to tempt and test men with his satanic schemes of slavery. This is part of our mission today. The same sun that shone on Israel Putnam during his mortal probation shines on us. And the same issues of light and darkness, force and freedom, right and wrong, that provided men a chance to prove themselves in his day, continue to sift the souls of men today. And so during these past 4 days, you've had the privilege of listening to knowledgeable spokesmen and exhibitors inform you of some of the latest subterfuge and schemes of the same evil force which has plagued mankind for centuries. And you've been told of some righteous alternatives. I commend those folks in their good efforts, and you for your desire to listen and to learn, and especially to labor in the cause of liberty. The thing that concerns so many of us today is not that wickedness is new, but that never before in our history has it been so well organized or as insidiously successful. Now, in view of this fact, and with a final showdown approaching between the powers of good and evil, may I be so bold as to add to the information and inspiration you've already received just a few personal observations and convictions of my own regarding God, family, and country, with the hope that they may be helpful. I know, as I know that I live, that there is a God in heaven, that He is perfect and all-powerful, that we are His children, and that He loves us, and that we are eternal beings. I also know that life is a testing time in man's eternal existence, during which he is given his free agency, the right to choose between right and wrong, and that on those choices hang great consequences, not only in this life, but even more important, in the life to come. There are boundaries beyond which Satan cannot go. Within those boundaries, he is presently being permitted to offer an unrighteous alternative to God's righteous principles, thus allowing men to choose between good and evil, and thereby determine the station they shall occupy in the next life. Said the poet, "Know this, that every soul is free to choose his life and what he'll be. For this eternal truth is given, that God will force no man to heaven. He'll call, persuade, direct aright, bless with wisdom, love, and light. In nameless ways be good and kind, but never force the human mind." God has not left men alone. He sends prophets, gives scripture, whispers counsel, answers righteous prayers, and in innumerable ways blesses his children. And he would more richly bless them if they were willing to obey the commands on which these blessings are predicated. I know that truth will eventually triumph, and freedom will ultimately and finally prevail. That fact alone should lift the spirit and hope of those who have an eternal view of things. Some of you will recall that during World War II, many of the British children were sent into rural areas for protection. One night, one of the small children, saying her prayers while the Battle of Britain raged over London, asked the Lord to bless the members of her family who were absent, including her father, who was serving in the RAF. And as she was about to close her prayer, she said, "And dear God, please take care of yourself, because if anything happens to you, we're all sunk." Now, the great consolation and hope of every patriot should be that God is in his heaven, that he is the same yesterday, today, and forever, that this is his earth, that he is in charge, that his word will not fail, that in due time every wrong shall be righted, every virtue justified, every evil punished, and every good rewarded. But for the immediate future, we face times and calamities that will test the spiritual strength of the best of us. Now, with that knowledge, what is our responsibility? Why, what it has always been: to keep God's commandments, no more and no less. And that includes the Declaration of Moses inscribed on the Liberty Bell in Constitution Hall in Philadelphia, where the Declaration of Independence was signed 196 years ago today. These are the words: "Proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof." It is my conviction that despite the serious trials and tribulations we will have to face before Jehovah's triumphal return, the forces of freedom and righteousness, which have never been better organized than they are today, shall not be destroyed. The number who are dedicated to and will preserve our inspired Constitution are on the increase, and God watches over the faithful, no matter what is going on in the world. It is our duty to be faithful, and a man cannot be counted among the fully faithful unless he is an active fighter for freedom. Resistance to tyranny is still obedience to God. how to resist in the most effective manner will require careful and prayerful thought on the part of all of us. For to be fully effective in the fight for freedom, a man must be in tune with the greatest champion and leader of free men, the Lord our God. And to be in tune with him, you must be in step with him. You must walk in his way. Now that divine duty to be a faithful fighter for freedom requires that those of us who have been warned do our duty to warn our neighbor. For our neighbor's involvement in this struggle can bless his soul, strengthen his family, and protect him from pitfalls while he helps his country. The blessings far outweigh the burden when you stand up for freedom. With gall comes glory. With a cross comes crown. With thorns come a throne, if we will persevere in righteousness. There are still more victories to be won in this fight for freedom, the most important of which is to save our own souls by taking a stand for liberty with the Lord. For amid the encircling gloom, the kindly light of the Lord can lead us on, can help expose and stop evil in some places, slow it down in others, give the forces of freedom the chance to become better entrenched, provide righteous alternatives, and develop faith and hope to keep on keeping on, in the divine assurance that in the brightness of the Lord's coming, the darkness of Satan's conspiracy will eventually be fully exposed and destroyed. Now, in the preparation for the showdown, may I encourage you to strengthen your families. I was delighted to read the recent article in the American Opinion on the family. We all responded to the beautiful music from these two ladies tonight. I was particularly impressed with the hymn, Love at Home, which has always been a favorite in our home. You, of course, know how the communists are determined to destroy the three great loyalties: loyalty to God, loyalty to family, and loyalty to country. Some of our patriots are losing their children. In our attempt to save our country, we must not let our own homes crumble. This nation will never be stronger than its homes. Don't neglect your own. You can't delegate that divine duty, nor neglect it without tragic consequences. Unless your children can attend a Christian Americanist school or institute, you had best be careful in sending them away from your hearth for additional education. The situation today is serious. The devil's thrust is at the home, the family, as never before. There are worse things that can happen to a young person today than not getting a liberal college degree. Multiply your influence by raising up God-fearing patriots at your own fireside. We need more than one generation of patriots in a family line. We need more men like John Adams, who took time amid all the demands of the Revolution and the building of this republic to teach and train a future president, his own son, John Quincy Adams. Stay close to your children. Not only should you have a strong spiritual home, but you should have a strong temporal home. Avoid financial bondage by getting out of debt as soon as you can. Pay as you go and live within your income. There is wisdom in having on hand a year's supply of food, clothing, and fuel, if possible, and in being prepared to defend your family and your possessions, and taking care of yourself. I believe a man should prepare for the worst while working for the best. But some people prepare and don't work, while others work and don't prepare. Both are needed if you would be of maximum service to your God, your family, and your country. And now may I close with a few words about our country. It is a part of my religious belief that America is a land choice above all other lands, a land with a spiritual foundation and a prophetic history. That we are not just another nation, not just one of the family of nations, but that we have been singled out to perform a divine mission for liberty-loving people everywhere. Those who founded this republic were wise men, raised up by our Father in heaven to perform that very task. And the Constitution of this land was inspired of God. We have a divine duty to preserve that Constitution from destruction and hold it aloft to the world. A book which I accept as Scripture tells of two ancient American civilizations that were destroyed as a result of murderous conspiracies, lusting for power and seeking to overthrow freedom. That book warned that when we should see a similar situation developing in our land, in our day, we would be under commandment of the Lord to awake to our awful situation. That day is upon us. And those of us who are awake to our situation have a moral obligation to do all we can to awaken our fellow citizens. The Book of Mormon also states that America will remain a free land as long as the people worship the God of the land. And it also assures us that unto the righteous this land shall be blessed forever. I remember a number of years ago when Cecil B. DeMille, the great producer of such films as The Ten Commandments, was invited to accept an honorary degree from Brigham Young University, the largest religious affiliated school in the country. BYU is one of the schools which has refused to accept federal subsidies, and it has been my privilege as an alumnus to serve on its board of directors for many years. In his address to the student body, Mr. DeMille made an interesting observation. He said that men and nations cannot really break the Ten Commandments. They can only break themselves upon them. How true. And so, my friends, in talking about our country, as well as our families, we return again to God. Because this whole basic struggle revolves around the spiritual and moral fitness of our people. And Nineveh was saved because the people repented while there was still time. But Sodom was destroyed because God couldn't find even 10 worthy souls. As the wicked become more wicked and more numerous, the righteous will need to increase in spiritual strength and numbers to offset them. One of the great blessings of the last few years is that the patriotic movement in America has become organized and strengthened to an unprecedented degree. A while ago, some lonely American must have felt like Elijah, who fled into the wilderness thinking that he was alone in rejecting false gods. But God knew differently and told Elijah of 7,000 who had not bent their knees to the idols. This lifted Elijah's heart, and he went back to the battle with Baal. We know that we are not alone in this freedom fight. You too have helped lift other hearts, but there are many more who feel alone, whose knees have not bent, or who might be a bit wobbly. There may be some who, with your help, understanding, and encouragement, might get off their knees to the idol of socialism and quit themselves like men. As we conclude this great rally, and it is a great rally, and return to our homes, we must do so with an ever greater determination to reach and influence those who, with our help, understanding, and encouragement, might themselves join us in the battle. God is counting on us to follow through. If we do it well, then we will have done our job. And like the watchman on the tower referred to in the Bible, it is our task to warn others of the darkness. Some will not listen, and they will be held accountable. But if we who have the word fail to issue the warning, then God will hold us accountable. Tomorrow I had hoped to stand in Washington, D.C. before those hallowed documents, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States, and reflect again on the lives, the fortunes, and the sacrifices which made them possible. May we this night pledge anew that the divine principles embodied in those documents be written on the tablets of our own hearts. I pray that our eye might be single to the will of God, that we might thereby bless our families and our country, and that we shall, with increased devotion, work for less government, more individual responsibility, and with God's help, a better world. God bless you. Good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is just one last pleasant task left for me at this dinner, and that is to tell Mr. Benson that in order that he will not forget completely that he's been here, that he may have a souvenir to remind him every once in a while of this happy occasion, I'm going to ask him to lift that blue cover there, and I will tell him about what is underneath it. The problem was this. We wanted to find something that Mr. Benson could really use and enjoy. And unfortunately, research led us to the discovery that something he wanted we couldn't possibly give him as a surprise, because it has to be made to order and to fit. One thing we are told that he has always wanted was a proper Western saddle and bridle to match. But we can't present them until they fit. So we have given him this little horse with a saddle which does come off, and we will ask him to go to his favorite saddle maker and find a proper saddle or have one made and the bridle to match it.
Thank you so much. I love a good horse and a good saddle. During the time I occupied that hot seat in Washington, I'd sometimes get tied up in knots, and I'd go out to that fine colored chauffeur and say, drive me down to Front Royal, 60 miles, where my good friend Bill Marriott had a ranch, the nearest to a western ranch I could find in Virginia. And I'd get on a horse, which no one else was willing to ride, and after a couple of hours I could go back to the battle renewed. I met this driver in Washington a few days ago, and talk about a diplomat. I met him on the street by accident. I said, Wallace, how are things down at the department? He said, oh, Mr. Secretary, they ain't the same. Now, can you think of a more diplomatic answer than that? They might be better, they might be worse, but they ain't the same. I'm very, very grateful for this. And then I should mention, someone handed me this, which I prize very much. A pin of the Minuteman. We saw the statue again today. I'll wear that proudly as I ride the horse from the saddles. Thank you very much.